Good Shabbos, everyone. Last week, someone told me a story about a young woman who was going to a big football game, but she decided to bring her very expensive Gucci bag to the football game. Well, she found out as she was about to walk into the stadium that in this day and age, you can't bring large purses or large bags into any stadium. You have to have a clear bag. So there she was, stuck with this very expensive Gucci bag. Her car was very far away, and she didn't want to miss any of the game. She was with several friends, but even though their cars were much closer and one of them lived just a few blocks away, her good friends didn't want to miss any of the game either. So she didn't know what to do. She finally found one of those part-time security guards who agreed to watch her bag during the game, and she got his phone number, and he said she could call him after the game and they could meet up and he'd give her bag back, and if she paid him just a small fee. She was thrilled. She gave him the Gucci bag. She went into the game. She had a wonderful time. The team even won. So after the game, in a good mood, she called that part-time security guard to get back her Gucci bag. Well, the part-time security guard answered the phone and started laughing. She said, "Why are you laughing?" He said, "Lady, you're an idiot. I sold that bag a long time ago. I'm not sure what you were thinking trusting me to watch your bag." There are, of course, many lessons we could learn from this story. One of which, of course, is don't ever bring a Gucci bag to a sporting event. The second one, of course, is be careful who you trust. Sometimes even those part-time security guards you can't trust. But there's another lesson I think we can take as well. Sometimes we need friends. Sometimes we need good friends who would have taken our bag to the car, would have gone the extra mile to do something for us that would have really helped. But unfortunately, as I recently read, I was very surprised to find out that for our young, it seems having good friends has never been more difficult. First, members of the millennial generation, between the ages of 23 and 38, recent polls show that they're missing something from their lives: companionship. A poll recently taken found that 30% of millennials say that they feel lonely, the highest percentage ever for any generation surveyed. 27% of millennials said they had no close friends. 22% said they had zero friends. In comparison, just 16% of Gen Xers and only 9% of baby boomers said they had no friends. The worst part? The numbers are even higher for the next youngest generation, Generation Z, our children and our teenagers. They have even larger percentages of lonelier people, with few, if any, friends at all. Why are these generations so lonely? It's obviously something that should alarm us. If younger generations are getting lonelier, it's concerning for many reasons. Loneliness only increases as we get older. If they're already showing high levels of loneliness, it could get even worse over time. There are even ramifications for their health. Loneliness is associated with higher blood pressure and heart disease. It can literally break our hearts. There's even been evidence that chronic loneliness can turn on genes involved with inflammation, which can be a risk factor for heart disease and cancer. Make no mistake, we all need some loneliness. It's okay, of course, to spend some time alone, and that feeling of loneliness is a reminder that we're social creatures who need other people. It's also important to recognize that loneliness isn't the same as having a few friends. We can certainly have fulfilling lives with just a few people that we count as good friends. But it's the social isolation that harms us. As one prominent psychologist points out, loneliness only becomes a bad thing when it becomes chronic. That's when the health effects kick in, and it becomes more difficult to connect with other people the longer you're in a state of loneliness. My friends, why do so many young people today feel so lonely? Higher than we've ever seen before. There are two main reasons. The first one is no surprise. Numerous studies now find a link between increased social media use and increased feelings of isolation. Wired nearly from birth, many of our young only know a world where they're completely and can be completely entertained and mesmerized without ever having to leave their rooms. At no fault of their own, their lives have been characterized by widespread use of computers, tablets, and cell phones. They've been completely surrounded with it their entire lives. No wonder the teenagers often can't help themselves but use their phones in movies, while eating with family and friends, or even at some of their friends' bar bat mitzvahs. And of course, it doesn't help that sometimes we as parents do the same. Therefore, it should be of no surprise that some of our young either have no incentive to hang out with other young people or just simply lack the skills they need to create and maintain relationships. Why make authentic life relationships when you can have online relationships? Why make real-life connections when you can have online connections? And what do you really need to know about how to make and maintain relationships? What all you need to know is how to click that you like a classmate's post. Last year, I'll never forget when a fellow parent told me how excited she was that her daughter was finally going to go to a Jewish event. She was going to one of those 8th grade Saturday night events put on by our JCC. She was excited to meet new people. She had very few Jewish friends. But she came home even more upset, crying to her mother, because the entire time on the bus to the event and at the event on the bus ride back, she said that almost every fellow teenager was on their phones the entire time. No one was interested in making new connections. As they get older, our young will have even more technology. Will they even want to maintain old friendships and create new ones? Or will their technology-infused lives give them the kind of companionship they think they need as they go through life? The second reason for the increased amount of loneliness we find in our young today: every age worships something. Previous centuries, societies worshipped religion, or the nation, or the race, or political ideology. What do we worship today? The self. Think about it. We seek self-esteem, self-respect, self-expression, self-help. We crave the selfie stick. We post selfies as if the whole world cares or needs to know about every move we make. Just look at the endless posts your teens look at every single day on Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. Every form of worship has its downsides, and it's clear today that that worship of the self has created increased anxiety, depression, and loneliness amongst our precious children. Researchers have seen again and again that more and more people, more and more of our young especially, are putting less of an emphasis on connecting with others as they emphasize their own self-interest. Is there anything we as parents, grandparents, concerned adults in our community can do to help? This past week, I drove my oldest son, Joshua, to Austin to move into his freshman dorm. Driving to Austin, I remember what it was like to graduate from the University of Texas just 25 years ago. And on the way into town, I remember the last night I spent in Austin before I went home to get ready for rabbinical school. I was out with a large group of my closest college friends. And that night, we all vowed to each other. I vowed that I would still speak to all of my college friends every single day, meeting up as often as we could, wherever we lived. And we would keep in touch so much that we would know exactly what was happening in each other's lives, just like it was still college. I was so stupid. I soon found out that life got in the way of my best laid plans. For all of us, of course, there were marriages, careers, bills to pay, our own children. And while I speak to many of my good college friends still, I certainly don't see or speak to them every single day. But when I do, it's like nothing changed. And of course, I know for like many of us, those phone calls and get-togethers are some of the most rewarding parts of our lives. And maybe that's the point. Yes, of course, life gets busier as we get older. Yet no matter how many distractions may get in the way, it's worth all of the effort to maintain our relationships. And no matter how busy we may get, it's worth the effort to create new ones as well. I think all adults here today would agree. Those of us who are adults know how much real-life friendships can add to our lives. Friends are there for us in times of need, and they're there to celebrate us with us in the good times as well. If we too believe in the importance of friendships, let our children see us not just talk about it, but actually live by that value. Sometimes we don't go out with mom or dad. Sometimes we don't spend time with you. Sometimes we meet up with old or new friends just to catch up or have a good time. Because if our children only see us work, spending time with them, or just sitting at home, how will they know the long-term importance of friendship? It may never be more important to set the right example. In our Torah portion today, we read the words, Lo titkodedu, you shall not cut yourselves. The rabbis long ago interpreted his meaning, don't separate yourself from the community. The rabbis even teach, give me fellowship or give me death. The Talmud tells a great story of a faith healer. All he had to do was lay his hands on someone and they were cured. He could cure anyone of anything. But then he himself got sick and called for a friend to come and heal him. Why couldn't he cure himself, the people asked? He was this incredible faith healer. Shouldn't he be able to just cure himself? The rabbis teach that sometimes self-help isn't enough. Sometimes even a faith healer needs the touch, the word, or the help of another human being. Judaism often reminds us that we are a tradition that's lived in the public. We need a minyan to say Kaddish. We do a bar mitzvah not at home, but in the synagogue. The prophets and sages of our tradition, our ancient ancestors, we read about in the Bible and in the prophets, none of them, not one, ever left their families and their communities to go live alone, spending their entire lives on some mountaintop, engaged in deep meditation. The rules and traditions that our ancient sages followed and we follow today were always about being with the people. We are men and women of the people. Jews need strong bonds with others to live fully in this world. As it has been written, that's why community is so important. It's where we meet face to face. Community is a society with a human face. It's the redemption of our solitude. As the Bible teaches us from the very beginning, it's not good to be alone. A good society is a community of communities, not just an array of selves. My friends, we know it well. Our young people's feelings of loneliness cannot be lifted by having lots of online friends on smartphones and social media. They need something more. They deserve something more. It's about being face to face, spending time with real people in the real world. Let us never be afraid to push our children to spend less time on their phones and more time outside with other people. Better we push them now to disconnect from their devices than they spend their lives disconnected from people. As we approach a new Jewish year, can we all push our children just a little bit more? Because it's never been more important. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.